welcome to another episode of Addicted to Business. This morning we are delighted to be joined by the LinkedIn professional, Mr. Mark White. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Excellent to be here.
Thanks for coming, Mark.
And
Pleasure.
today we're joined by my co-host as always, Mr. Stokely Howard.
Thank you. I appreciate being here.
So Mark, this morning, firstly, thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
Today I would like to talk about tips, tricks, how to get the most from your LinkedIn profile. You've become a well-known presence locally as the LinkedIn professional, and every corner I turn, it seems to be someone talking positively about yourself.
Well, that's very kind.
So I would love to dive in for the next 45 minutes to try and give the readers, the listeners, the watchers, all the insight we can about the power of LinkedIn.
Okay.
So start at the start, very quickly. I remember talking
when LinkedIn was born.
Talking off air, and you were saying actually your story itself, you kind of fell into LinkedIn, right? It wasn't that exciting, but just very quickly, why LinkedIn and how did you get it?
Gosh, it was simply by chance, in all honesty. My background's actually international sales and marketing, so that's where I come from. That's what I really loved. However, decided at a certain moment that wanted to focus a bit more on marketing, a bit more on content marketing, so became the blog professional for a couple of years. And as I was doing that, was sitting with a guy who was a professional in around Twitter.
Okay.
And we said, well, we've got blogging, we've got Twitter, if only we had LinkedIn. So I looked at it. Perfect.
Yeah.
My background is B2B. LinkedIn is very much B2B focused. It seemed to be something you could do so much with. It wasn't just a sort of a single thing. And in that, just started using it. And this was 10 years ago now. And for the last 10 years, all I've done is talk to people and to companies about LinkedIn and what it can do for them.
You must love LinkedIn then.
Oh, God, it sounds sad when I say it out loud, to be honest. But, do you know, it really is. I think LinkedIn is absolutely fabulous.
It's come a huge way, right? Even every day there seems to be new features, new functions, and I mean, that keeps your job fresh and allows you to consistently deliver great value and insight to your clients.
Well, this is what I try. I mean, the whole point of LinkedIn, from my perspective, is that it's a tool.
Yeah.
And my aim is to, shall we say, match up what the tool can offer with what the business or the individual's business needs are. There's no point using LinkedIn if it's not going to provide value.
Absolutely.
Therefore, we have to identify where the pain points are, what can it help with, and then how can we implement it within a sales or a marketing or a recruitment, or let's face it, from an individual, a career strategy. So it's all those things together.
So let's start. We're going to go through 3 tiers. We're going to go through beginner, intermediate, and advanced.
All right.
Little tips for each, because our kind of following will be a real varied mix. So let's start with beginner. If you're not on LinkedIn and starting up your LinkedIn profile today, what are the kind of fundamentals that you must get right? And one of them I know, which is a real bugbear of mine, is when you go on and someone hasn't got a photo and it's just a little grey avatar. Like,
that was with my profile recently, because you messaged. I thought, well, I have a profile picture, and you messaged me saying if you're not connected, then people see a little avatar.
Yeah,
didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
Well, there you go. If you're not connected, so you need to change your settings, right?
Well, ideally, the settings are there for you, because LinkedIn wants you to be visible to people.
Yeah, of course.
So LinkedIn tries to help, but my guess is there was a little bit of a glitch, maybe sort of a year and a half, 2 years ago, when they changed all the profiles. So the profile keeps changing, and the last big one was 2.5 years ago. I reckon they changed the setting on some people.
Interesting. So that's a great actionable tip for people to take away today. But what else can people do as a beginner to start off?
It is actually putting those things in place.
Okay.
I mean, we talked about there getting the settings right, and there's a whole exciting settings page.
I love it. It's like setting up a new iPhone or something. It's great. Settings.
It's a Friday night, pint of beer, glass of wine, into the settings page. Loads of stuff to do.
Rock and roll.
Rock and roll. Well, I particularly think it's brilliant because right at the top it tells me, Mark, you're the boss of your account. And to be honest, I'm not the boss in many places, so I visit the settings page just to be boss somewhere. So, you asked, what do we have to look at?
Yeah.
The first one is, and you're spot on, everything on LinkedIn revolves around the individual. And the way the individual sort of represents themselves on LinkedIn is the profile. So we really need a profile that talks you. But talks you to the people you want to talk to. And that sounds silly, but I guess that the first thing you asked about the beginners, and this is beginner, intermediate, advanced, think of who your audience is.
Okay.
In other words, if I'm looking for a job, my audience is going to be recruiters, it's going to be HR people, it's going to be line managers. Therefore, my profile in all the little bits we need to add in there, needs to talk to that audience. So you're going to present yourself in a certain way. If, on the other hand, I'm a salesperson, then my audience is going to be my potential customer. Well, with all due respect, we probably don't need to know that you're a great, you've got great interpersonal skills and you're a good team player. That can go on your CV. That can go for the recruiters.
Well, it's very much like a CV now, isn't it,
Well,
LinkedIn?
in bits it is, if you want it to be.
Okay.
If you don't want it to be, then it's a sales and marketing brochure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so actually it comes down to the audience as to what it should do, because it's still the same person. I can say I'm a great team player, but a client is not going to care about that. So I'm going to focus on what a client cares about, and I'm going to talk to them about that.
That's interesting. Put yourself in the eyes of the customer or the client and think what they would like. Now, you do training for clients and businesses all over the country. What are the kind of key things that you see cropping up time and time again that people don't seem to be getting right?
It's not necessarily a case of not getting it right, but the profile is an obvious one. And sorry, to come back to your initial one, but it answers this question as well. There's a wonderful space at the top of your profile called your banner. Or the background, whatever you want to call it, but a big space just above your photo. Time and time again, I see people who've got nothing there. So we've got their nice blue area with some networking symbols. So it's prime real estate, as my American colleagues would say. We need to use it, and we need to use it in a way that we can actually get a message out there. So the first thing is put a banner in. And from a corporate perspective, although it's a personal profile, it's also a real branding tool, both individually and from a company. So we want to create something that gives off a message, but is still in some way personal, if you can.
So would you have a consistent banner across, take a team here, 17 of us here at Quickfire, would you say...
Growing team.
Growing team, indeed. Would you say consistent banner photo, but different individual, obviously, profile shots? And how do you differentiate profile to profile? Because I guess you've got almost an above the fold like you would on a website. You've got your photo, you've got the banner, maybe a little bit of text.
Hugely, yeah. I mean, actually, LinkedIn's got a name for it. They call it the introduction card.
Okay.
So it's that top box that we've got on LinkedIn, which contains banner, photo, headline, and then contact details. So in an ideal world, so if I had access to, someone who could do this for me, the banners would be different, but they would be on a theme.
Okay.
So I worked with a couple of companies, and one was a coffee company over in Milton Keynes, and what they did is they created 7 different banners, but all on a theme. So we had logo, we had imagery, obviously related to coffee, and we had name and contact details, just a little bit of contact detail. And for me, that was ideal because it gave personality, but at the same time, it gave consistency and it gave brand.
Let's dive into that personality piece, because you see some of those profile photos, and it's someone from a wedding 10 years ago, it may be someone in fancy dress. I mean, at the end of the day, more often than not, I'm having meetings and useful conversations, and the first thing I want to do is look on their LinkedIn and try and spot them in an audience, right? So what do we say to those people that are using, just some of the photos you see?
Yes. There is a slide that I bring out occasionally if I don't feel I'm going to be sued, of 4 photos that I took off people's profiles. One gentleman is dressed as a Santa, and it was June. Another one.
Is he trying to get hired as a Santa though?
No, he was a sales manager for an IT company.
Fair enough.
So no, all in all. Another gentleman was in fact drinking a glass of wine, which is not great, in a leather chair. That's okay. Unfortunately, naked.
Oh.
Yeah, indeed. And that was his LinkedIn profile. So there are a number of elements where this is clearly not right. Rule of thumb for me, it's great to show personality, but not everyone is going to respond to a photo in the same way. Therefore, what I tend to encourage is, look, this is like first impressions. It's like I've walked into a big room that we call LinkedIn, and I'm dressed in a certain way. People are going to think things. If I walk up to someone, you walk up to someone, shirt and tie, they're going to take on a certain image. You walk up with, Motorhead T-shirt, ripped jeans, they're going to view you in a different way. So the photo has to convey that, and therefore I'm going to say, who do you want to meet? Who's your audience again? when you meet them, what message do you want them to take away?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
that's the photo I'm going to encourage you to put in there.
Yeah.
Should it be fun and personalised? Ideally, but people take it in different ways. So play it a little bit safe in my mind.
So let's dive away from the profile from a sec, because there's still loads we can do there about education, experience, all that good stuff. But I want to talk to you about groups.
All right.
Bit of a curveball. What do we
Hate them.
What is the power of LinkedIn? I mean, I'm signed up to hundreds of groups.
100, I'm afraid, because that's the limit. But
Well,
let's not be
many.
picky.
Oh, there we are.
Let's not be
It's
picky.
gone up. I'm signed up to far too many groups, okay, which I never use. They seem like a good idea. What power can we get from groups, and why should people engage and use groups? Or should they?
Well, there we go. That's another issue. If we'd had this conversation 4 years ago, I would have been very, very ebullient about groups because they're great places. It is a forum where people of a like mind can talk about a subject that interests them. LinkedIn, unfortunately, about 4 years ago, had a number of complaints. There was too many emails going out. So they said, well, tell you what then, we'll stop telling you when there's new content in groups. Since they stopped telling people there's new content in groups, people stopped going to look for new content in groups. And therefore, the groups started to actually fall apart a little bit, in my opinion.
Okay.
There are still some really good groups out there to bring it up to date, and LinkedIn spent the last year and a half rebuilding them. My issue is that the audience has not come back. In other words, there are still loads and loads of groups, I guess, who have the right people in there, but they're not talking to each other. And the actual groups had group discussions, and the discussion bit is missing, and that worries me. So at the moment, unless they're good groups, and there are some good ones there, I tend to encourage people to not stay away, but actually spend their time more effectively elsewhere. Sure. If you have Sales Navigator, which is one of the premium accounts, then one of the filters in there allows you to look at everyone in any group.
As I found yesterday.
Yeah. As you found it? Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Awesome. There we
Yeah.
go. And that's brilliant because, of course, they are self-selecting.
Yeah.
So if there is a group about, well, let's talk
You
a
can
business
gauge
in
interest,
Norwich,
I guess, yeah.
now we know that they've joined that group because that's what they're interested in. So with Sales Navigator, we can start to apply that and use it as another filter for targeting our audience.
Fine. So the next two topics we're going to go on to, I'm trying to think as many valuable things as people can take away, is endorsements and keywords.
All right. Gosh.
So
Yeah.
Okay.
let's talk endorsements first.
Okay.
The amount of people that have endorsed me for my skills on Microsoft Excel or PowerPoint is obscene.
And are you
how do
good?
I'm okay.
I've heard you're really
can-
good at
I
it,
can
actually.
use a PowerPoint.
It's a
in
Norwich
that
talking
case,
point.
At the same
Take
time-
it on board.
At the same time, let's talk endorsements.
Okay.
Are they valuable? If they are, what do people need to put in there? And why do people put, and I'm just as guilty as the next person, about my qualities in Photoshop and PowerPoint and everything else if I don't use that day to day?
Okay. If I may just take it one step back a little bit. The endorsements are actually endorsements of skills. So it's actually the skills section that we're talking about there. And then people can endorse you. Thumbs up. For those listening, I did a thumbs up there. And we can endorse people for it by saying they're good at it. So first element, skills. Should you put skills in there? For me, the answer is yes.
Okay.
You can hide that whole section, but skills are brought into the search. So you asked about keywords, and we'll come on to that in different areas. Skills count as keywords. So there's in the full recruiter account, they can actually search within the skills. For the rest of us, they come under the general keyword search. So they're useful. Endorsements. There's two ways on LinkedIn that you can say people are good at stuff. Recommendations, where you write something, fabulous. Love recommendations.
They're awesome.
Yep, absolutely. And LinkedIn, as I said, terms that section as recommendations. They're brilliant. Love those. Endorsements the other way. Up until about 2.5 years ago, if I went onto one of your profiles, LinkedIn would say, "Hi, would you like to endorse Nathan for his top 5 skills?" And I'd say, "How do I get rid of this box?" And I would press yes. And that actually built up a whole load of endorsements. They changed that, as I say, about 3 years ago now, at which point endorsements seem to fall off a bit.
So they're invaluable now, essentially.
I don't think they're...
Well, they're not words, are they, really? It is just a click of a box. Which doesn't
And that's
make them
the trouble.
as genuine as a testimonial.
Yeah,
or
so people still push them a little bit. I'm yet to find many people who are going to be really taken by endorsements. I'm a little bit jaundiced, have to be said on this, because I put extreme ironing in as one of my skills. And I've had people...
Well, I can tell, actually, by the shirt and the trousers.
Thank you for that, yeah. And I've had more people endorse me for it than for my LinkedIn coaching. And that galls me a little bit.
Well, I think you're missing a trick, actually, Mark. I think there's a good money in it.
A new avenue?
Career, yeah.
Is this a subtle tell that I should perhaps be changing career? Thank you for that, Stokely. Appreciate that. So endorsements, they're there. I would have them rather than not, but I'm not going to focus too much attention. I don't believe people do nowadays.
Fine. Let's move to the magic of the hashtag.
Oh, the hashtag. Okay.
The hashtag. So I remember meeting you for the first time. It's got to be about 6 months ago now.
Mm-hmm.
And I was putting probably 10 to 15 hashtags per post.
Mm-mm.
And the first, well, that's exactly what you said when I'm there. The first thing you said is tone it down to kind of 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Okay. Why is that?
Why?
That's a question. That's a good question. Hashtags on LinkedIn. I mean, people are more and more familiar with hashtags. Previously, it was a big Twitter thing. Now, of course, it's Instagram leading the way. And it seems to be more hashtags the better. Instagram is hashtag mad. There's a hashtag in itself. LinkedIn works in a slightly different way. LinkedIn primarily uses the hashtag as a way to almost matchmake. The algorithm, in other words, when you look at your homepage, LinkedIn decides what content you see. And we'll probably have a chat about this afterwards. Therefore, one of the ways that we can try and make LinkedIn understand what our content's about is by putting some hashtags in there. And if people have said, I'm interested in this topic, I want to follow this hashtag, then LinkedIn says, content about this topic, person who's interested, let's make sure we put that post on their homepage.
Do you know, it's one of the best tools for content creators and for people wanting to put out content. The platform allows the content to be shared easily, whereas Instagram is just like, no, we're not going to share your content, and Facebook the same. We're going to charge you for it. But
well, LinkedIn's not gone down to that route
which
yet.
is good.
Yeah.
I hope it doesn't, to be fair.
Surely it's got to, isn't it, in terms of...
I hope not. They've got many other revenue streams. Okay. So if I may, just on the hashtag thing, just as to finish that off, there was a post from one of the product marketing managers over at LinkedIn that people seem to have jumped on. This is about a year ago now, and he sort of indicated that 3 was your optimum. Okay. I haven't seen too much wrong with putting a couple of others in, if I'm honest, but they sort of stated 3, and that's been sort of widely bandied about. I don't really want people to click on my hashtags, because then they're being taken away from my post.
Right.
So I tend to put 3 hashtags in, maybe 5, and I put them to the bottom of the post.
Yeah.
If I'm going to use them, then I do 2 which are quite generic, because I'm trying to match it up with a big audience. Maybe 2 which are a bit more specific. So if we're talking about, today, I'd maybe put hashtag LinkedIn, but maybe I'd put a hashtag in about content marketing. Yeah. A bit more specific, and maybe I'd do a tracking one as well.
Okay.
So maybe I would talk about, quickfire. Okay. So maybe I'd have that as a hashtag, so I could track who had then shared it. So I could use hashtags in that respect as well. So different ways, maximum of 5. Some people would say 3, but that's where I'd go with hashtags.
Okay, fine. So let's talk about the algorithm, because I appreciate we're dotting around topic to topic, but there's so much value.
There's so much to talk about.
Minutes, so I'm keen to extract as much information as I can for our wonderful audience. So let's talk about the algorithm. I love sports and play a lot of games, and I always see it a bit of a game. Okay, so essentially there is a system or an algorithm that we have to understand, learn, and arguably beat. So talk to me about the algorithm. It's changed significantly recently. It's now showing a lot less of the percentages of kind of you're not reaching your whole audience anymore. You're now reaching a certain... Is it 10% now?
No one can ever be sure exactly how much.
It's not 100%.
But it's that sort of level.
Okay.
We believe.
Okay.
LinkedIn actually, and you talked about people like Facebook leading the way. Well, LinkedIn about 2.5 years ago followed exactly what Facebook had done sort of 3 years previous. In other words, they stopped sending all of the content that you post out to everyone that you're connected to, which they used to do. Too much content, going through too fast.
Yeah.
How to decide who sees what. the algorithm. And so it's a little bit of AI where LinkedIn tries to decide who should be seeing the content you put out.
Okay.
Just with a quick step back, LinkedIn is a business. It makes its money from people looking at adverts as one of them, premium accounts, recruiting stuff. So they want people on their site. Therefore, they're going to reward people who keep others on their site looking at their content.
Yeah.
And so there's our issue. If we put something out, LinkedIn sends it out to a percentage. If that percentage thinks this is good, liking this, by liking, by commenting, by reading, then LinkedIn puts it out to another 10%. Perfect. And if they like it, they get another 10%. So we're rewarded for good content.
Oh, interesting.
Or if I may, I'm going to call it popular content.
Yeah.
Because actually that's what it rewards.
So in the early days of a post game, if we were to post now, we get a few likes, a few shares, a few comments, we get a bit of interaction, that post will do better than something that has no engagement for 24 hours, say.
100%, yes.
Fine. So I have seen, and this may be right, this may be wrong, a rising groups and little cohorts and people that are almost ambassadors for each other's content.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
How beautifully put.
There we are. So I'm trying to tread very carefully here. What are your thoughts on it? Because sometimes it's not sincere, right? You're not rewarding the content because you've read it and you think it's great. You're rewarding it because you're ticking a box because you're part of a group.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid that is it.
Yeah.
I still think that we do have to play the game a little bit.
Yeah.
And that won't be well received by all, I know. However, we also need the content to be relevant.
Sure.
If I like lots of stuff from people just because I've said I will, but it is not content that I think the people I'm connected to are going to want, then ultimately they may disconnect or they may unfollow me.
Yeah.
So they won't see my other content that I'm posting. However, we do need to try to get this distribution. And I sort of liken this, and I wrote a post about this about a year and a half ago. I don't know if you're a Strictly fan or perhaps an X Factor, but if we look at any of the sort of those, I'm going to call them game shows, the question I ask is it the best dancer who wins? And the answer is usually no. It's a good dancer, but it's the most popular.
Yeah.
And that's really where the posts are. You can write the best post ever, but unless it becomes popular and we can orchestrate that a little bit, then I'm afraid it's not going to get seen.
Makes
So
a
we
lot of
have
sense.
to not only write good content, but we also have to then play the system and the cohorts, as you called them, pods, as others might call them. They have sprung up. If they are relevant, then I think there's a place for them. But it is gaming the system, and some of LinkedIn's T's and C's could be sort of read as to be less than happy with that scenario as we play the system.
My issue is that one, that I think they're very time consuming, aren't they? That's the thing. I mean, I've been in one myself, putting it out there, but I was just like, this is so time consuming. There's 10 people in it. You've got to do this, this, and this, and it's just a lot. It still seems like a lot of effort for what it is.
And in which case they're unlikely to work.
Yeah.
Because ultimately we need it to be easy.
Do you need volume as well? Is it set enough,
No, I did some testing going back again about 12 months or so, and what I found was that if it did work like this, the initial impetus that, say, a group of 15 might give then made my content visible to all of my actual connections who weren't in that group.
Yeah.
And they liked the content, and then they distributed the content.
Okay.
And so actually it was almost like, and I'm showing my age here, it's like pulling the choke out in a car.
Okay.
Really showing my age there.
Any of the listeners know what we're talking about?
Absolutely not.
What's a car?
What's a car? Yes. Going out in 2052. Yeah. Still valid. Yeah, so it's basically giving that initial oomph to the engine to get it started, and then once it gets started, then it actually takes on a life of its own. So there is there's certainly an option for it. My preference is still to play the algorithm in a nice way, and that means engaging with other people's content.
And does LinkedIn reward more activity?
Yeah.
So the more you're on it, and the more you're active, and the more you're posting and commenting and liking, when you put out a post, is more likely. Is that the way it works?
In essence, yes.
Yeah.
Does it reward just any level of activity? No, we don't believe so. If you are interacting with other people's posts, so a couple of posts you put out yesterday and the day before, I will like that. I will comment if I feel it's relevant. That's good. And LinkedIn will take into account of that. If, on the other hand, I post 15 times a day, the first one goes out and goes in and takes the normal algorithm. If I then post again, it seems to sort of put a break on the first bit of content.
Okay.
And so if I'm posting lots, no, it's probably going to be overkill. Interaction, on the other hand, with other people's, and indeed liking your own, yes, LinkedIn does like.
This is the perfect point. And one thing I've found, and it's a real bugbear of mine, is people that tag you in a post that has no relevance. And I'm sure you guys get it all the time.
Yeah.
But there are certain people, and they may even be listening, that continue to tag me in stuff that I have no interest in, no like, and they almost like kind of piggyback on your profile, and it does my head in. How do you stop that? I mean, this is
a personal question.
Okay, personal question.
Counselling. Help me.
LinkedIn counselling.
You see, I use the word coaching, but counselling sounds good here. Yeah, one-to-one counselling. Okay, new offering from Mark. You can, in the settings, you can turn off the ability to be mentioned.
Let's grab 5 minutes afterwards.
The trouble is, of course, that will turn it off. It turns it off on the people you do want to be mentioned by. The only other one is actually talking to the person. Hi, I really don't want to be mentioned.
I think it's that difficult conversation to say, how many times do I have to remove myself from a tag to make you realise I have no interest in being tagged in this? Thank you. I appreciate what you're doing, but I don't want to be tagged.
That was beautifully put. It's long-winded. Yes, absolutely. But no, I'm afraid that's it. It's just telling people no.
Fine. So if you're listening and that is a problem of yours, just message people and tell them to stop. So let's take this up a notch.
Yeah.
I want to talk about prospecting.
All right.
Okay, so we've done our beginner bits and we've got stacks and stacks of great content there, which hopefully everyone watching, listening, and kind of doing what else can take from this. But in terms of prospecting, LinkedIn is a phenomenal tool. So we look at a sales funnel and we think, okay, the start of the sales funnel would be to fill in the hopper. Okay, put people in the hopper at the top and potentially engage with them for an event or whatever. Talk to me about prospecting. I guess Sales Navigator would be one of the best places to start, or is there a way to do this in a more cost-effective way?
Okay. I love Sales Navigator. Let's put that out there. I train a lot on it, and I think it's a great tool. However, there is an awful lot you can do on the free account. So actually, one of the, I'm going to call it hidden features. It's not really hidden. It's just people don't know about it.
Underutilised, perhaps.
Underutilised is a fabulous way of putting it. Thank you for that. You have a huge number of filters that you can apply to any search on LinkedIn. Search for people.
Yeah.
So if you put a sort of search in the top box of LinkedIn, top left-hand corner, nice box, says search in it. Good place to go, but it's a keyword search. So if we are looking for people, though, any words you put in there look through the whole of the profile.
Yeah,
which is great, but we can look at stuff in all sorts of ways. You put my name in there, for goodness sake. Yes, you'll get people called Mark White, but you'll also get people who sell products which remove white marks from upholstery, because all it's doing is looking through the keywords. Yeah. So. If we go there and we ask LinkedIn to search for people, it takes us through to a place where we can apply all filters. And all filters on LinkedIn, coming back to your question, allows us to look through the whole of LinkedIn to identify who we're connected to, who we can be introduced to, so first and second level connections, where they're based, down to a postal town, who they work for, who they used to work for, what industry they work in, and rather helpfully, their job title. So the first thing to fill the hopper is, who is our buyer persona? Yep. Let's take it back to sort of, read the book, you see, read the book. I can even do the 2x2 matrix. There we go. Shows the MBA. Highly qualified. So we look at who we want to talk to. Who's our customer, our prospect, our buyer persona, if you like. Therefore, we now need to fill in all of those filters to identify those. Because there's 660 million people on LinkedIn.
How many there are?
Yep. It's 28 million in the UK, allegedly. So we want to identify the very small percentage of those that we're interested in. Yep. In the job title, we first of all put who we're looking for. We have to remember, however, that people use different ways to express their job title, so we need to build that in. Then for a lot of people, they're either going to focus by industry or by location. So now as we apply each of these, we build up a list of people who actually have the right criteria for us. In other words, top of the hopper.
Okay, so if you had to choose one search criteria that you're allowed to use, which one would you go for?
It depends what my I guess focus is. Yeah, well, for me, I still like the job title. I feel that narrows it down, but there's no good looking for a head of marketing over in Hawaii because that's not really a thing. So if I may, I'm going to beg for a second one, and I'm going to say location. There we go. So at that point, I've got job title, the right people, and in certain key locations.
So there's a very famous business saying that says, turnover is vanity, profit is sanity, cash is king. In a LinkedIn scenario, how would we extrapolate that phrase? Is it kind of connections is vanity? Because I'm very guilty of having a lot of connections. Admittedly, I know a lot of people, but at the same time, not as many connections as I've got. And so what is vanity? What is sanity? And actually, what is the king of LinkedIn?
I don't have quite as nice a phrase as those three steps for you. However, I'm going to start with what we want to achieve. We want to talk to people.
Yeah.
LinkedIn, as far as I'm concerned, is a fabulous tool. We've probably already established that. However, from my perspective, just talking to people on LinkedIn isn't necessarily going to get me anywhere. What I want to do is meet them face to face.
Sure.
So therefore, for me, the king is the conversation.
Okay.
The vanity, to take it right to the start, is almost views. In other words, if I put a post out and I get 10,000 views, then that's nice. And people may sort of remember me, but actually it hasn't given me anything yet.
Yeah.
And I did a post actually just over Christmas. Well, it amused me. Sorry, that's why I laugh. You don't know what it is yet, so you can't be amused.
Sounds hilarious.
It sounds hilarious.
There was good now.
There was
building it up.
It's not good. Oh dear, set myself up here. There was a load of posts that came out around Christmas of things like Christmas trees, and it says double tap on this Christmas tree, and all the lights are off on this Christmas tree, of course. Double tap on the picture, and the lights will come on. And so people go in and they double tap.
Yeah.
And nothing happens. So they think maybe I've done something wrong. They double tap again. And they double tap once more. What happens, actually, is that nothing will happen because it's a picture, so nothing can happen. But when you double tap on the mobile on LinkedIn, it likes it.
Yeah.
Therefore, I put this picture up, and I said, this is why they're doing it. Don't do it. And it got 60,000 views because people didn't read my don't do it. They tapped on the picture. Therefore, did the 60,000 views do me a lot of good? Well, yeah, there were some people who said, thanks for the info, Mark. Read your post. Love it. And I imagine there was an awful lot of those who said, let's double tap.
Yeah.
Therefore, for me, has that given me a bit of visibility? But any real tangible benefits? No. So the vanity for me are views. King, conversations, and in the middle, it's the engagement. In other words, you find people that you want to talk to, and you engage with them, and you can get a huge amount from that on LinkedIn. But if you just connect and leave it, as sort of 90% of people do, then that's no good either.
So vanity, views, sanity, engagement, king is conversation.
Face to face, yeah.
Can't beat that.
I don't think so.
Fine. So, okay, let's take it up another notch. When you're talking to top level execs and senior teams, what advice are you giving to them? Because of course they, in theory, I'm sure some may not, but they would have the profiles all sorted. They would be able to navigate around the Sales Navigator, be able to do all that good stuff. Where'd you go from there?
It depends in some ways if it's for them or for the corporate. So we've got individuals, we've got teams, and then we've got companies.
Yeah.
If they're there representing the company, then we need to have a strategy to actually start to use the content and bring in all of their employees.
Okay.
So the sort of bandied about phrase, not just on LinkedIn but elsewhere, is employee advocacy.
Yep.
So we're looking at people who are going to push your content out, but that needs to be orchestrated in many respects.
Okay.
So if we're looking at that, then still everything on LinkedIn revolves around the individual. That's your key element. It's you. When it was set up 17 years ago, it was basically your Rolodex, your address book. There we go. I'm getting blank looks here. I'm in a
Rolodex.
My granddad.
People have got to
taught
back me on
There
this
we go.
one, surely.
So yeah, no, but it was all about you. It's your address book. And therefore, everything on LinkedIn revolves around you. You get the connections. You engage with the connections. You meet with the connections, just as we talked about. Therefore, from a management perspective, from a director perspective, what I want to do is I want to almost tap into that. So I want to create an environment where our individual contents can be helped and brought together by other members of the team. And that now we get almost like the benefit of the crowd. We can start to orchestrate that. We want to support their content, but in turn we also want to create stuff that's going to benefit the company, which then they can distribute. So from that perspective, in a lot of cases, it's actually getting the team to get a consistent approach that's good.
Okay. So in terms of advocacy, I'm a big one into personal development and continuing to improve.
Mm-hmm.
On LinkedIn, what books, resources, tools out there, apart from talking to the LinkedIn professional himself, which we'll come back to, what tools are there out there that someone listening or watching can go, yeah, okay, I will go and read that book? Or how have you kind of got all the skills that you've developed?
I just spend way too much time on the platform, to be honest. So that's just sad.
Measure approach.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I'm in the sad position, and I use the term advisedly, that if something changes on the site, because I see it rather too often, I notice it's changed, and there are a number of us out there. My issue with the first part of the question is that, and I think you mentioned it earlier in the session, LinkedIn's constantly changing.
Yeah.
Therefore, if I said this is a good book, by the time you read it and it's been published, LinkedIn's probably changed again.
Sure.
And therefore, there aren't massive sets of resources. There are some very good books out there. They are ones that either LinkedIn for Dummies is a good base level, but they change so much. So it is very much a case of almost trying to find people who can support you in that, as well as just develop your own pieces that you're interested in. So LinkedIn's own resources are quite good.
Sure. So as a startup, I guess that would be the place to start.
Yeah,
Some
I think
people,
so.
with all respect, will not be ready to invest in so I do suggest that anyone that does have budget to do so, as we've started doing and starting to reap the rewards. But actually, for those earlier on in the journey, they're not in that position.
Yeah.
Therefore, go to LinkedIn resources. Is
LinkedIn
there
resources.
Academy, did I see, or is that just for the paid platform?
Not an academy per se.
Okay.
Not by LinkedIn. I
Sure.
believe there are people out there who call it, but it's not
Got
by
you.
LinkedIn.
Yeah.
There is
Right.
a LinkedIn Learning area,
100%.
which is a big resource they bought about 2.5 years ago called Linda.
Yeah.
But that's not just on LinkedIn. That is on all sorts of topics, loads of videos, lots of good stuff in there. But on LinkedIn itself, help area is good. I don't know, people like myself, so at sort of linkedintraining.net, and I write blogs about it.
Yeah.
And there's a very good podcast called LinkedIn Formed by someone else who's been in the industry as long as I have, called Mark Williams.
Okay.
So I'll throw that out there because it's a really good resource.
Sure.
Oh, nice.
So let's go. We've got about 5-10 more minutes, and so before wrapping up, I'm going to try and eke some even more value out.
Okay.
If that's even possible. I'm sure we're pretty tired, but let's keep going. Photo versus video versus nothing at all.
Yep.
So the amount of LinkedIn posts I see that are just text.
Yep.
Boring, non-engaging, sometimes difficult to read. Obviously, a photo often changes that.
Mm-hmm.
And a video, I guess, takes it to the next level. How can people, is it right that people should start using photos and videos more?
Okay.
Or is there still a place for just text posts?
We're talking, yes, posts, and we're playing two things here. We have an audience that we're trying to tap into, so you and I reading stuff.
Yeah.
We're also going to realise that the algorithm that we chatted about earlier responds to these posts in different ways. So therefore, if we have a post which has an external link, then LinkedIn says, well, hold on, if someone reads that post and clicks on the link, they're no longer on LinkedIn. This isn't good for us.
Yeah.
So they don't give it as much oomph. They don't give it as much distribution to start with. Therefore, you'll see a lot of posts where it's either a text post or a text with an image, and then people say, if you want to, follow the link in the first comment.
Right.
And then they comment on their own post, and that's where they put the external link.
Got you.
So LinkedIn thinks, right, posts, keeping people on here, and we get the link that we need to take people
That
to
makes
our
a
website.
lot of sense, doesn't
We're
it?
doing it wrong all this time.
We're promoting the podcast wrong.
So but it isn't a killer, total killer,
Yeah.
but it does bring it down quite considerably in terms of the initial sort of push. So
Okay.
we have that we can play with. Once it's got some impetus, you can go back in, you can edit the link back into your post, which is where we'd like it.
That's what I say. Is it possible to, for example, I posted about one of our episodes last night.
Yeah.
I put it in the main body of the text. So we're all learning, listening, and I'm still learning, doing the interview as well. So is it possible now for me to go and edit, take it out, put it in the comments, and then will it have a chance to grow again, or have I kind of, as that ship sailed?
No, we don't know, but we believe that it should be done at the start because it's the initial, and they talk about an initial goal in 1 or 2 hours even, and so no.
Yeah.
The other thing, of course, is that you put it out in the evening.
Yeah.
Fewer people on there in the evening. Less initial oomph.
Yeah.
Therefore, perhaps it's better when people are more on LinkedIn.
And what time would you suggest?
I usually, when people ask me that, tell them it's between 10 and 11 on a Tuesday.
Okay.
Yeah, that's absolute rubbish, obviously.
I was about to say, we're changing the launch of the podcast to
it is when your audience is most likely to be on there. And if there's going to be fewer people in the evening, then clearly we're going to have something.
Well, I'm the same. I don't use LinkedIn in the evening. I mean, people are during the day.
I do, but others do. But for morning one's quite good. 8:39. You know, they arrive at the office. You know, they've had a few pings on the phone, so they check it out online. That's quite a good one. If I'm talking, however, to a London audience, then obviously people are travelling in. So 7 to 8:30 is a really good time because people have got nothing else to do. They've played Candy Crush. You know, so what are they going to do now? We'll read a bit of LinkedIn. So all those things are right. In terms of the posts you mentioned, to start with, text only, and it still does to an extent, seems to be a really good way because LinkedIn responds, but it still needs to be telling people or asking for an opinion. And it's really that. If we can get engagement on the post with text, then that's great. But if I look down my homepage, I stop on the pictures. So if I don't already know you, then I'm not going to start and read your text, but the image might make me stop to read the text. For now, all the good stuff in there to take over.
I guess it's about land space, isn't it? Really, it's how much space you take up. Like, for example, when I upload a JPEG to LinkedIn, I always convert the JPEG to a PDF. And the reason being, someone told me this like 2 years ago, that it makes the picture bigger on LinkedIn. Is that true?
No.
Okay.
Fake news.
But I do always upload a picture.
It may have done at the time.
Yeah.
There is, however, you gave me 3 examples: text, picture, video. There is a 4th one called document.
Yeah.
So actually what you're doing is you're loading up a JPEG as a document.
Yeah.
At that point, LinkedIn treats that differently and has given more impetus to that because it was a newer feature, came in about 9 months ago.
Okay.
So actually it is good,
Right.
but for different reasons. So well done you.
Hey, ahead of
Beat the
game.
system.
Yeah. Win. So emojis, very quickly.
Yeah.
Good, bad, indifferent.
I'm, as you've already gathered with my references to
Jokes.
to Rolodexes and
Rolodex,
all of those. Thank you for that. I'm old school. Dinosaur. I appreciate that. I may be walking out soon.
We're not going to have a podcast.
I'm not a big emoji fan, but I have to recognise, just like the images that we've talked about, the JPEGs, they bring something to life.
Yeah.
So actually, if I'm making bullet points, because in my post I want to get some points across, throwing in an emoji of sorts or a little image are going to bring it to life. I still can't quite get the skyrocket ones and the laser focusing and all of that. The party popper. Yeah, you see, that's now gone beyond the old school. That's just sad to me. But for lots of people, it brings it to life. And that's the key bit. What's going to grab their attention? What's going to keep them on your post? What's going to make them want to talk to you?
I feel like there's so much to talk about.
There's it. Well, I mean, it's always almost worth a second episode of the podcast, and maybe we can get you back. But for now, thank you.
My pleasure.
We really appreciate you coming on. For those listening, final thing, for anyone listening or watching, how can they get in touch? And I implore you to get in touch and to contact Mark, come to his training events he hosts and everything else, because they are phenomenal, and we've been delighted with the results you've helped us achieve and continue to help us achieve. How do people get in touch with you?
LinkedIn.
I'm often on LinkedIn. It has to be said. I've got a website at linkedintraining.net, so obviously you can get me through there. But I do spend an awful lot of time on LinkedIn. Just to go back to the search, if you put Mark White in, you're going to get all sorts of stuff. If you put Mark White and then something else on my profile, such as LinkedIn, so you search for Mark White LinkedIn in the search, I'll come up, and that'd be a great place to get in touch.
Perfect. Well, like I say, I encourage you all to get in touch with Mark. Great guy, as you've seen, a lot of fun and super, super knowledgeable. So thank you again. I really enjoyed that, and I hope to catch you again
Thank you
soon.
so much.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Cheers.